Can I kick it off by just noting that at the moment, the Substack-based journalist Ken Klippenstein, who published a story this morning releasing the opposition research dossier. Actually, it wasn't opposition research. The Trump campaign produced this dossier on J.D. Vance, highlighting his strengths and weaknesses, and as part of the consideration process of who would be Trump's VP pick. And the Trump accounts or emails got hacked by a mysterious party. Some people are speculating Iran. And then actually that story was broken by Judd Legum on Popular Information, another Substack publication. And Judd decided not to release any of the contents of the hack. For ethical reasons. He had been implicated in a previous hack in 2016. Some of his emails had been released as part of the hack of the Hillary Clinton emails. And he thought it didn't rise to the public interest, this particular information. And so for ethical reasons, he decided not to disclose them. Ken Klippenstein has a different view of them, and journalists always have different views about what's worthy for public release. And he released that dossier today because he also got it independently and wrote a story about it. In the time since, his account on X, which used to be known as Twitter, in case people don't know what X is, has been suspended. I checked with him independently. He said, yes, it has been suspended. I haven't got any more details than that. But interesting and timely development given the subject of our discussion today.
Damn. I haven't got into all the details of that yet, but that does sound like a spicy development.
What we should do is wildly speculate and then draw conclusions that support our pre-existing biases.
I've been on the internet before. Part of the reason I wanted to talk about this today is this is probably one of the most common questions I get when I meet people in person who are on Substack, who just have been following us in the world. They're like, oh my God, what's happening with X? What happened with that thing? Is it still ongoing? What's the deal? But then in order for that to make sense, it might make sense for us to just briefly recap the history, how we got here, what's been going on. The basic story is about a year and a half ago, we launched the first version of Substack Notes. And I was rereading the post today because it does lay out a lot of our rationale for wanting to do it. We wanted to have a place where people could recommend anything on Substack. We wanted to have a place on the internet that had all of the power of short form posting and the ability to sort of blend worlds and have conversations that was not subject to sort of the vagaries of the engagement advertising model. We didn't imagine it at the time as competing with X. We even took pains, I think, to point out that Substack and X could and should coexist, had been coexisting. The idea that you could share your Substack posts on X, that makes both platforms better. You can embed tweets in your Substack post, that makes both platforms better. We felt quite strongly that, these things could and should coexist and reinforce each other and serve the greater discourse on the internet. Management at X did not agree with that assessment. I think saw Substack as a threat or a challenge and took very dramatic action at the time. So there was a brief period where not only did all of our API access that we've been using as intended forever get sort of instantly revoked. So you could no longer link your Twitter account. You could no longer embed your tweets in your Substack post, a bunch of things that were just really nice. They stopped working. And Substack links were hard blocked on the free speech platform. And if you mentioned the word Substack, it wouldn't work. And if you searched the word Substack, it would just say no results. This doesn't exist. It kind of got the treatment of just the most extreme, memory holding thing, to the point where to this day, people give Substack the Voldemort treatment on X. They'd be like, I'm over on that platform whose name we're not allowed to say, and here's what I posted. And we kind of have to do that, insinuation thing. That was such an extreme move that there was sort of like a very broad outcry that drew a lot of attention to Substack. It drew a lot of attention to just what was like the fact that kind of action was the thing that would be taken. The extreme parts of that, and there were some other dirty tricks that were happening. There was a period where there was a deliberate delay added to links. There was a bunch of just like really underhanded, almost like devilishly inventive things, devious things that happened. The most extreme, the most obvious on the surface level of those things were rolled back. And I don't want to talk about any of this flippantly, because all of this, if you remember this, Hamish, this was very, I mean, it was stressful to us, of course, but it was extremely stressful to writers who are trying to promote their work, are trying to, share their posts with their audience, get subscribers, like work on this platform that they've been investing in for years and years, that they lived a lot of their life on, that they had all these hopes for, was now kind of like in this extreme thing. It was very quite an unfair thing to do.
A lot of writers felt unfairly caught in the crossfire.
Yeah.
And our thing was like, we're not even firing, we're just getting fired at. But it was completely unfair on writers. They got penalized because of this sort of reaction from management to this thing that we were launching, that we were trying to develop for Substack, that was, in our view, very complementary with what was happening on the other platform.
And we take that really seriously. And then since then, the thing that sort of happened was the most egregious of those things were rolled back, but there is still some penalty on Substack links. You don't get if you have a Substack.com link, you don't get a preview. There's only a handful of sites that get that treatment. Substack is one of them, unfortunately. I suspect those links are pretty heavily penalized. But the thing that's changed is that same treatment, not the preview part, but the link part, has kind of just been applied steadily across the board, to the point where today it's not just Substack links, it's kind of all links. Like most links don't really perform well on Twitter for reasons that I think are good.
But there's not really that's not just like personal enmity based decision. That's not a grudge decision. That's a business decision from that platform, right? And it's actually not different from what Facebook and Instagram have been doing for years, because their business models demand that. You're a little bit crazy, in fact, to have a newsfeed based product that is monetized with advertisements and is reliant on keeping people stuck on these feeds for as long as possible, and then let the people, or even encourage the people in some cases, to go off to some other site and poke around there before maybe coming back, or if you ever come back to the feed.
Yeah, and this is why this is a big part of our motivation for building, the Substack app, the Substack destination, all of these central Substack surfaces, is we know that writers and creators rely on the ability to share their work and reach new audiences. And every other platform that happens on, whether it's X, whether it's Instagram, whether it's TikTok, whether it's LinkedIn, they're sort of like, either there's actually an incentive not to allow that, right? If I'm designing a feed algorithm and you click out and read some long form thing that's deeply valuable to you and changes your life, you just tank the metrics. That's ad dollars I could have had. That's feed scrolls I could have had. It's either sort of actively hostile to it if they're being sort of rapacious, or it's they don't care. They don't care either way. I think this is what's happening with Meta and news right now. They got so much heat for what happened in 2016 that they're now just like, oh, screw it. We don't need politics on here at all.
Yeah.
This is what they did to the news people in Canada that were trying to like create a link tax for them. They're just like, screw it. We don't need this. We're just politics. Downrank it.
Yeah.
We've had so many reports of people that are just trying to post legitimate stuff, and it's like, it's politics. We don't want that. So it's happening on Meta. It's happening on like TikTok is owned by the CCP. X is crazy. There is a need for this thing.
Let me ask you this, Chris, then, to make it a little bit spicier. Instagram, primarily about video sharing, photo sharing, that kind of stuff. Facebook, primarily about like getting ads in front of your face, I guess, and letting uncles and aunties post inane stuff about their lives. X holds itself up as a discourse platform, and that's why management there has made such a big deal about fighting for free speech. To what extent do you think that the discourse positioning is compromised when the platform doesn't let you go out and visit other sites to read things?
I do think it belies the principles. And I'm very, as you know, I'm very sympathetic to the free speech argument, the freedom of the press argument. I think that the complaints that people had about old Twitter and the regime of control that got revealed there was genuinely shocking and was genuinely bad. And I think it was a frankly heroic cause to want to take that thing over and change all of that. To me, the downside is like, as soon as you do that, but then you're also, blocking links. And I think even more so, I think blocking links in general as a business decision, I don't love it. I don't think it's good for readers, but to me, that's less of like a free speech issue. But the idea that you're going to censor a competitor or censor people who publish on a competitor, or you sort of you have these high-minded principles of freedom of speech until the minute that something is sort of inconvenient for you from a business perspective, and then all that's out, and it's whatever we feel like. I do think it undermines what could have been a very high trust, very powerful principled stand.
And on the discourse element as well, can you be a good platform for discourse if you want to do everything in your power to not let people leave your feed?
I think it hurts. It definitely hurts. And I think it pulls in a certain way. And I feel this right now. I still use X. And I'd say the qualitative...
I grab your admission in front of the public. I salute your courage.
I do. And there's still stuff on there that's great. There's people on there that are great. There's things on there that you can't get anywhere else.
The best fighting videos on the internet.
Well, I was going to go there. But today I'm what's going on with this OpenAI stuff? And there's a few people who are posting about it on Substack and they're wonderful, but there's that thing is just unfolding on X still. It's unavoidable. But then what happens is I'm there for that, and you just get this feeling as you're scrolling, it's not trying to pull me deeper into something that's interesting or valuable. It's trying to pull me into things that just suck me in. And it's look at this guy get beat up, or look at this cute puppy have this thing happen, or look at this art. It's very working against my agency. And I do think that's a consequence of pursuing the metrics within that business model in a pretty direct way. I don't think it's a malicious, deliberate choice, but I do think it's a foreseeable consequence of the way they're approaching it.
So you mentioned at the start of this call that about a year and a half ago we launched Notes, and we have talked about it all the time since as not being a direct competitor to Twitter or X, that these two systems should be able to play nicely together, that there's nothing in the laws of physics that suggests a writer shouldn't be able to build an audience and find an audience for a certain style of engaging and discourse on X and have a good subscriber base on Substack and have those deeper relationships and those owned relationships. But I wonder today, given the way that things have played out on X, it does increasingly seem like there should be an alternative, and that Substack could play an important role in offering an alternative. And has your thinking changed at all? Do you want to go more directly at that problem? And do you think that Substack could be a better place to hang out for those people who are seeking those kinds of experiences otherwise on X?
I do think that's a retro future now. We had this idea of these platforms could and should coexist the way they have been. And we would have been happy to pursue that path. But I think that's not the future we got through choices that management at that platform made. And I don't think Elon wants a peaceful coexistence between Twitter and Substack as independent companies that we thought was possible. So yeah, I think that's kind of like we are in competition to some extent.
And what do you think could be better about the Substack experience than what X offers today?
I think we can, we've been consistent appliers of this principle of freedom of the press. I think that's something that we can kind of like hold up as something that we've done, frankly, even when it's very uncomfortable for us from a business perspective. It's not a position of convenience. It is something that is like a deeply held value that you and I and people at the company here share. I also think that the fact that on Substack, unlike X and unlike Instagram and unlike all these other platforms, if you come across something in your Substack feed that's this wonderful long form post or this wonderful long form podcast or video, and you click into it, we're winning too. The platform is set up so that if you're finding things that are not just like the fight video that keeps you glued to it, but that are, here's this, 10,000 word monograph that's going to change your life, or this deep interview or this other thing, there's sort of like an alignment of incentives where if you're becoming your best self, that's also how the platform makes money. There's not as much tension. I don't want to say it's perfect. I don't want to say that everything's like the model magically fixes everything, but I do think there's like this idea that when Substack is good in the kind of way you want it to be good, that actually works with the business model. And so my experience using Substack is it's more thoughtful. It's deeper, that people there are kind of like engaging with ideas in a longer form way. There's less things that are just there to kind of like grab me and push me to fight. And I think we can lean into that and help it reach its sort of greatest potential.
Yeah, another thing is, and I use this metaphor all the time, people who hear me saying it might be sick of it by now, but I feel like Elon bought, in this case, a shitty gasoline car. And the thing that he really wanted, or that the world should really get, is a brand new electric car that gets to start again with fresh assumptions. And so to like drive that home, like, because you're smarter about thinking about these kinds of things to me, can you sort of describe what the difference is between a feed that is gold on, or a feed that seeks to maximize engagement and ad impressions, which is the gasoline in this metaphor, in case anyone missed that, versus a feed that seeks to maximize money for writers and creators, paid subscriptions?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, there is a lot in common, we should say. And, one of the things that the reason everybody uses X is because it's good, right? There is something good there. There is this, powerful thing of, I'm going to be able to browse a bunch of things that are interesting to me and find things that are good and find interesting conversations and follow interesting people. And there's kind of like this, this machine that's bringing this stuff to me. And I think, we're not against that. I think there's a way that you could misinterpret what Substack is up to. That's like, oh, all of these other platforms are too fun. And so we're going to make the anti-fun platform where you just eat your vegetables and you never see any memes. I think that would be a very boring platform that wouldn't work. But I think of it as like, there's a way that it pushes a little bit. It's like finding you the things you want. And then is it kind of like, helping push you to find something that's like deep and interesting and good, where, the way that every other social media platform wins is you stay glued to the feed longer and you see some ads, and that drives the revenue up. And the way that Substack wins is you stay on the feed for a while because it's fun and good. And then eventually you find something that you fall in love with so much that you decide to pay for it. And that's a different incentive. It's a different kind of thing that's going to win that game, even though there's going to be a lot of commonality of like, we're going to bring you things that are interesting and show you stuff that's fun. And you want to, you want it to be good. But ultimately, the fact that on Substack, we want you to get subscribers. We want you to get paid. We want, something that speaks to people that way.
Yeah. There are some people who have worried about the Twitterization of Substack. I see that coming up sometimes in critiques. And one response I have to that is actually all the behaviors that you worry about being imported from other places to Substack are happening on the other places anyway. And that's where people go to try and build an audience that they convert into subscriptions on Substack. So don't worry about the Twitterization, because the Twitterization already exists. It's just out there in places that are not actually perfectly helpful to you. But then if this kind of behavior that people have demonstrated they like, I like it. I like snacking on stuff. I like scrolling, like discovering new voices, new people to fall in love with. If that lives within the Substack system and is tied to the maximization of paid subscriptions, which is money for writers and creators, and is actually how Substack, the company, makes money, then I think you not only kind of reduce the power of those systems that you're skeptical of and reduce their influence in society, but you maximize or increase at least the power that can accrue to the writers and the creators of the world in terms of ownership, because they get to own the audiences that result from those deepening experiences through the Twitter-like feed and through money, which is the thing that they often need to have to produce more of the work that so many people find valuable.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest difference at the end of the day, right? The idea that you can make something great on Substack and actually make money from it, make money doing the work that you believe in at the end of the day is like, it's just different. It's different than what you can get elsewhere. And make money in a reliable way with a connection that you own. The other thing I'll throw at you for this is, and I think this is not exclusive to X, but I remember, do you remember dig.com?
I remember dig.com very well. I'm a little bit older than you, so it's like right in my sweet spot of adolescence.
It does sometimes happen because these platforms that get built have these such strong network effects. They can feel invincible. You can get to the point where it's like, oh, this thing is never gonna, like, MySpace will never fall. And what can happen, I think, is that that strength can mask when there's going to be it can cause things to go on for a long time. And then when they unwind, they can unwind very quickly. And I think this is something, I'm not predicting this, but I think it's something that could possibly happen to X in the future. Who knows what's going to happen with the TikTok ban on TikTok? Who knows when, Meta makes decisions that shift the winds that say, oh, we don't want politics anymore, or look at what happened to Zynga or BuzzFeed when the winds shift. I think as a person on the internet who's building an audience, who's creating stuff, you want to have your connection with your audience anyway. You want to have a thing where it's not, you're not totally at the whim of these platforms, A, continuing to succeed, and then B, continuing to suffer sort of like your livelihood working. You want to be everywhere. Of course you want to, if you're on Substack, you want to be on every platform, and you should be. You should be able to grow your audience everywhere, but you shouldn't you shouldn't be wholly dependent on anyone, I think.
100%. People have taken that lesson from the BuzzFeed era. BuzzFeed, as a news publication, tied its fortunes to Facebook. When Facebook changed its priorities, it meant BuzzFeed all of a sudden lost all its traffic, had to reinvent itself, and actually ended up failing, essentially. It's still around, but it's a totally different proposition than what it once was. And people, understandably, are still nervous and once bitten from that era. And they look at Substack and they worry about building their media businesses on Substack. Are they putting too much reliance on this platform that might change its rules around? But this is a question I love when I get it, because it's different. Substack is preserving and upholding all the benefits you get from network effects, from a bustling, exciting network of smart minds that can help drive growth and bring you subscribers, bring you readers, bring you revenue. But it also gives you the total ownership and agency over your content and your audience, which is represented as a mailing list. And you can export all that anytime you want to go off and build it on your own stack. So you get to get the benefits of major internet network effects without having any of the trade-offs, which means giving up control, giving up agency, giving up ownership. The best platform ever built, I might say, Chris. What a genius is. What a splendid thing for the world to have.
All right. So you like Substack. Good to know.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. See ya.